This video is for business leaders who want their team's brains firing on all cylinders to their creative and to maximize their creative and cognitive output. Do you remember the last time you missed a whole night's sleep or had a fractional night's sleep, like 4 or 5 hours or less? Or even worse, had multiple night sleeps which were under 5 hours, 6 hours. Did you feel dull, dumb, and uncreative? You were. It wasn't just your imagination. So watch to the end of this video for bonus material on something called sleep hygiene to help you get a good night's sleep consistently, and a recommended video on sleep and 4 other foundations of success. Right now, I'm going through one of the most messed up sleep cycles or sleep schedules of my life, and my personal verification of something important about 7 hours of continuous sleep. That's a critical part of healthy sleep, but more on that later. First, let's talk about some things sleep isn't that may surprise you. Your body doesn't need sleep, but your brain does. Now, this isn't definitive, it isn't guaranteed, but there is research to strongly indicate that it is your brain specifically that needs sleep, that your body merely needs rest. That is, sitting around and recovering may be enough, but your brain absolutely needs sleep, and that seems to be without debate. There may be some debate still as to whether your body needs sleep, but there's good evidence that it really doesn't need sleep. It just needs downtime, physical rest. So that's it. And recent research actually strongly suggests that most or all of your brain's housekeeping is done while you sleep. So what your brain isn't is inactive during sleep. Your brain is actually quite active during sleep. Much of your metabolism is geared down, but your brain's metabolism could be equal or even higher than your daytime activity, but it's not doing the same thing. So your brain, unlike much of your body, is actually quite active at night. So sleep isn't downtime for your brain in the normal sense. It's busy, but it's not busy doing the same things it would be doing during the daytime. It's doing that housekeeping I was just referring to. Some of that housekeeping is actually, and this is what it is not just removing what you might expect. Of course, it's removing things that are not good for your brain, but you may be surprised to learn that actually one of the things that it removes is neurotransmitters, which themselves become neurotoxic as they break down, and especially even if they're not broken down, neurotransmitters themselves, even perfectly intact and in their normal state, can actually become neurotoxic at high concentrations, but especially when they react with oxygen that is oxidized. So most of these things I'm talking about, it's a pretty neuroscience-y episode, but I've also put some links in the description, which just, most of them are short videos. A couple of them are actually academic papers if you want to get your geek on and look into them. But one of the things, and this is actually a quote out of one of the videos that I will link in the description, and that is that sleep has important effects on memory, but this is not just in one way, but in more than one way. How well you slept last night affects how well your memory works today. That is, last night's sleep affects today's ability to recall new information. And there's also evidence that sleep and perhaps dreaming itself, the function of dreaming, may be, well, they can't prove this definitively, the more you learn during the day, the more is correlated, higher learning or more volume of learning during the day is actually correlated with longer periods of REM sleep or dreaming sleep. So it could be that dreaming itself is your brain's way of consolidating or transferring what you learned today into your long-term memory for tomorrow. So as you sleep, it appears to be one of the functions of sleep seems to be that your brain, whether it's only during the sleep cycle or during other cycles as well, during the dream cycle. During sleep, your brain is consolidating memories, and in fact, your dreams may be that process of transferring from short-term or working memory into long-term, more permanent memory. And now back to that 7 hours things I was talking about before. Some research shows that the brain can show signs of unhealthy buildup of protein or plaque, the same one associated with Alzheimer's. And it can show signs of that buildup of that particular plaque in as little as 1 night of disrupted sleep. So disrupting your sleep, getting less than 7 hours, has that negative effect. That is the buildup of plaques or proteins in your brain that are associated with Alzheimer's or pre-Alzheimer's, and it could take as little as 1 night of that interruption. But another thing about 7 hours, it seems to be perhaps a sweet spot, though there's some debate about that. Some researchers have shown that there's actually a very large release of calcium, and that it only occurs after about 7 hours of continuous sleep. That is, at some point during our sleep cycle, around 7 hours, there's a massive release of calcium I don't know if it's just in our body or in particular in our brain. I couldn't find the specific research for this video, but I remember this distinctly from previous research I'd done on this topic. And if that part of our sleep, that uninterrupted 7-ish hours, is interrupted, not only do you get the association with those plaques I was just talking about, but this calcium release that seems to be critical for our sleep is completely interrupted, and it just simply doesn't happen. So if you wake up in the middle of the night, maybe there's some variation on that. I'm not really sure. But maybe if you get up quickly, you use the restroom and you go back to bed, maybe you're fine. But by and large, if that sleep is interrupted, the research suggests that that calcium release never happens, and that is critical for your circadian rhythms, which is your daily sleep and wake cycle, but also your sleep itself. And sleep clinics, years ago, when I was in university, one of my customers, I had a lawn care and snow shoveling business. And one of my customers there, one of their relatives, or perhaps it was their daughter, worked in a sleep clinic and said that a 2-to-1 ratio of calcium and magnesium, along with purple grape juice, was one of their remedies for sleep disruption. Or for sleep disorders, to get people to sleep. So that's how critical calcium can be. Though this isn't specifically associated with that, it shows you that calcium is a critical part of the sleep-wake cycle. And if you interrupt it, you don't get it. And my own experience in the last couple of weeks actually has been, I don't think I've had any 7-hour sleep cycles. They have been like 6 and change. Some of them have only been 3, and then I slept later in the day, but none of them have been 7. And I felt kind of continuously a little brain dead or a little tired. And after a relatively short period of time of being awake, I start to feel tired again. Now, it's interesting because that sweet spot, the reference to the link that I talked about that talks about that sweet spot, they've done research on over 500,000 people between, I think it was 38 and 72, something like that. So older adults, I guess you could say, or mature adults, and that they found that above 7 hours or below 7 hours tended to be associated with a lot of sort of cognitive impairments in brain performance, but also potentially health problems or health risks. But there's some debate about whether that 7 hours is gospel or not. Now, essentially any less than that 7 hours I was talking about, like I said, that calcium release doesn't happen. We're not really sure what this means, only that it appears to be critical to your brain and sleep health. So what does all this have to do with creativity? Because that's sort of the main theme for this week. Well, creativity is a product of your brain. The better it works, the more creative and more likely to it'll be that your creativity will be better in both quality and quantity if your brain is in good shape. So while you may have a project coming up and you're going, well, I need to power through and not sleep tonight. In fact, for a lot of the reasons I've already cited, the memory, the learning, and your creativity, your cognitive performance in general, just like when you were foolish in college and decided you'd pull an all-nighter, it probably actually hurt your marks rather than helped your marks, because if you didn't get that significant amount of sleep, probably 7 hours of sleep, you probably forgot the vast majority of what you think you remember from studying that extra time. So thank you for watching this far. This is now on to the bonus content, and this is how you can assure you get the right amount of sleep. Essentially, what you want to do is practice sleep hygiene, and I have a link that I will likewise put in the description for you regarding that. As I said, today is actually a link heavy thing, and all of them but two are short videos themselves, very informative ones about sleep and some of the things I've talked about today. So what sleep hygiene means is it's essentially like personal hygiene, something or let's call it fitness hygiene, that doing something consistently and regularly will help you sleep and get these critical things like that 7 hours of sleep. This essentially means that you're sleeping and waking up at the same time, basically every day, whenever possible. And that if that schedule is changed and disrupted, which sometimes happens in life, in critical business issues, in critical personal or family issues, is that if that schedule is changed, one of the best things you can actually do is assure that you wake up at the same time as you usually do the next morning, regardless of what time you went to bed. So if you went to bed at 6:30 in the morning and your usual time for waking up is 8:30 in the morning, to maintain your sleep cycle, you should probably try your absolute best to wake up to that alarm at 8:30 as usual. It's going to suck for that day, but it will keep you in your sleep cycle. Now, understand this is a common misconception. Everybody says it's early to bed, early to rise makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise. I say bullshit and nonsense. I would say consistent to bed, consistent to rise makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise. My schedule typically has me waking up around noon, my local time here in Japan, because I do a lot of work and have a lot of relationships with people in North America. So it's not really when you wake up, though that may be associated with other people and their schedules in business. It really has nothing to do with that. It has to do with getting a proper full night's rest of approximately 7 hours, maybe slightly more, or maybe more in general, which I'm going to talk about in a second. And here's some of the other things you can do. In addition to waking up at the same time every day, regardless of when you went to sleep, to continue to establish that schedule or to keep your sleep schedule, your sleep hygiene. Your body knows when you wake up. Another thing you can do is exercise regularly, but finish your exercise at least an hour. But I would recommend more like 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed if you exercise in the evening. Actually, I think the best time to exercise is in the morning if you can. It's just so that there's zero chance it'll interfere with your sleep, and because you get it done. If you get it done first thing in the day, there's nothing that's going to get in your way later on in your day that could then disrupt or displace, especially unpredictable things, your exercise schedule, which is critical for all aspects of health, including sleep hygiene. So I'm going to put a link, of course, for that, and I'll put it in the description because I don't want to have cards all over this video, even though they are YouTube videos. Finally, choose one of the two following techniques you think is the best. Now, both of these have solid evidence. I'm actually going to leave it for now as to which one I favor. I favor one over the other. You can't do really both, but both have solid evidence, and the debate about which one is true continues. There's strong evidence for the 7 hours exactly, and there's strong evidence for the alternative coming up. So you either want to sleep until you wake up naturally without an alarm. So this has nothing to do with 7 hours, though it may just happen for you to be 7 hours. It may be longer. And this argument is that your body knows how long you should sleep and when you should wake up. And if you wake up naturally, that's your body saying, it's time for you to wake up. I'm finished with the house cleaning. I'm finished with the memory consolidation. You're in optimal, your brain is now in optimal running order. Or set an alarm and wake up after 7 hours after you sleep. Now, how long does it take you to fall asleep? That's going to be a question you're going to answer for yourself. But for most people, it's about 15 minutes to half an hour, probably closer to 15 for most people. But you can experiment with that and set your alarm to wake up. So if you go to bed, let's say you go to bed at 11 at night, just as an example, or midnight, let's say midnight to make the math easy. You could set your alarm for 7:30 in the morning, assuming that it took you roughly half an hour to fall asleep. And that might hit your sweet spot. You'll know in terms of how you feel in the morning. If you feel groggy, you either have to set it for slightly earlier or slightly later, and you're going to have to adjust. You really want to go through as many 90-ish minute cycles as you can, because that's natural. Some would even say 110. Again, you're going to have to experiment with yourself, but the general rule seems to be full 90-minute cycles. So that's 90, 180, 270, 360. And so 360 would be 6 hours of sleep. So 6 hours of sleep or 7.5 hours of sleep. So when you wake up is going to be your best judge if you're using your level of fatigue or sleep inertia, which is when you wake up and feel groggy. It means you woke up during a deep part of your sleep and you may not feel rested as a result. So you can tweak according to that. So whichever one you take, if you use the no alarm system, then you don't have to worry about that because your body decides when you wake up, which in most cases and ideally should be when you're fully rested. Okay, so that's it for that. And my recommended video for today is 5 Foundations of Success. I will put a link there for that one, as well as in the description. And please share this video with anyone who's lacking sleep, creativity, or cognitive power. They're all linked. This has been Crush It Club 277, inspired by sleep. Improve creativity through better sleep. My name is Tim B. Green. Bye for now.